Stop right there. If you hold Iraqi dinar, this one update could change how you think about cashing in, planning, or protecting your money in 2026. I'm going to walk you through everything step by step, what people are saying, what banks actually do, what the risks are, and the practical moves you can make now. I'll explain the rumors and separate them from what's confirmed, and I'll give you easy, plain English guidance to help you make a calm, smart decision. There's a lot of noise out there, so for the next several minutes, stay with me. We'll cover the rumor that Chase Bank is reviewing the 25,000 and 50,000 Iraqi dinar notes, what that really might mean, why it's not an automatic revaluation, and how to avoid scams. I'll also give you checklist items to prepare your notes, how to talk to a bank if you decide to inquire, and what to expect if larger banks start the process of recognizing these denominations publicly. Multiple community reports and online updates have been circulating about Chase possibly reviewing or preparing systems to accept larger IQD notes. These claims are widespread in dinar-focused channels and forums, and that's the starting point for our discussion today. Let's get clear about the difference between community reports and official bank action. Right now, what you're seeing across forums and many video channels are claims that Chase, one of the largest U.S. banks, is reviewing or preparing to accept 25,000 and 50,000 Iraqi dinar notes. Those reports are what's driving excitement, and they sometimes sound definitive. At the same time, there's no public formal announcement from Chase posted on its official press pages stating that branches will accept IQD notes for direct exchange or deposit at retail teller windows. That absence matters. A rumor or a community video can start the conversation, but bank policy changes are usually documented in official releases, internal memos to branch staff, or regulatory filings before they become something customers can rely on. For people holding dinar, the practical takeaway is this: treat media claims as a signal to investigate and prepare, not as proof that the bank will instantly accept your notes and convert them into dollars on the spot. You should closely watch official Chase channels and reputable financial news outlets for any formal notice. A helpful context piece here is how major banks operate with respect to unusual foreign bills. Historically, most large retail banks in the U.S. do not offer direct retail buyback or cash exchange of Iraqi dinar to U.S. dollars at their branch counters. For many foreign currencies, exchange services are handled by specialized forex desks, money exchange companies, or banks that maintain direct currency relationships and liquidity for that currency. Institutional arrangements like correspondent banking, SWIFT messaging, and treasury services are the usual routes for international currency flows, not retail tellers. That's why experts who study the dinar market repeatedly point out that most major banks won't simply accept large stacks of IQD from walk-in customers unless there is a clear, bank-wide policy and the necessary clearing and liquidity lines are in place. This is a technical but crucial point. Just because a bank's back-office systems or an internal group reviews a currency doesn't automatically mean your local branch will walk you to a counter and hand you an equal amount in dollars. It usually means something a lot more procedural: testing systems, verifying compliance, and building settlement pathways. Let's pause to remind ourselves about the specific notes people keep mentioning: the 25,000 and the 50,000 Iraqi dinar bills. The 25,000 note is one of the more commonly discussed higher denominations and has been in circulation for a long time. The 50,000 note exists but is less widely used in everyday commerce, which makes it somewhat rarer in foreign exchange channels. Knowing which notes you own and making sure they're genuine and in good condition matters a lot if a bank or a licensed exchange ever accepts walk-in exchanges. Damaged, heavily worn, or counterfeit bills will be refused, and damaged but authentic notes can create extra paperwork. Also remember that the publicly quoted exchange rate for IQD USD you see on currency sites is a mid-market rate that may not reflect what a specific bank will give you. Rates for unusual currencies often include large spreads or require special processing, which is why local exchange shops or specialized forex providers sometimes handle them differently from major bank retail counters. Before you travel to a branch or call a bank, photograph your notes, note serial numbers if you can, and store the bills flat and protected so they stay in the best possible condition. Scams have long followed dinar excitement, so while the chatter about Chase is understandable, you must stay alert. Whether a rumor creates hope or panic, scammers frequently exploit those emotions by impersonating banks, offering insider ways to cash out early, or asking for upfront fees to process exchanges. Chase and other major banks publish guidance on spotting fraud, and law enforcement has prosecuted scams tied to Iraqi currency schemes in the past. That means two things. First, verify everything through an official channel. Call the number on the back of your bank card or use the bank's official website contact info. Do not use phone numbers or email addresses from random posts or social media comments. Second, never send money to someone who promises to secure a special rate or shortcut for you. Treat any urgent-sounding request to wire funds, pay a fee, or give private account details as a red flag. If you're unsure, report the contact to the bank's fraud unit and to local consumer protection authorities rather than acting on the message. Staying safe is more valuable than trying to be the first to benefit from a rumor. Okay, now the big practical part. If you hear that Chase is reviewing the 25,000 and 50,000 notes, what does reviewing typically involve from a banking operations standpoint? In plain terms, a review can be a multi-step project. First, compliance checks. Banks must ensure that accepting a currency is allowed under U.S. banking and anti-money laundering rules, and they need processes to verify origin and authenticity of notes. Second, settlement and liquidity. The bank must have or partner with correspondent banks or treasury services that can actually convert IQD into USD in the interbank market. Third, operational updates. Internal systems, teller training, and accounting systems must be updated to recognize the notes and the correct denominations and serials. Fourth, pilot testing. A bank might test systems in a controlled environment or at a small number of branches before a wider rollout. These internal steps can take months or longer. So when you read that a bank is reviewing a currency, expect it to be a cautious, documentation-heavy process, rather than an overnight change visible to customers. That's why patience and preparation matter. No bank wants to accept something that creates regulatory or operational exposure. If you're a dinar holder, getting ready now is smart even if acceptance is still hypothetical. Start by doing a careful inventory of your notes. Count them by denomination, photograph both sides, and make a separate written list of serial numbers if you can. Keep notes clean and flat. Avoid folding, taping, or writing on them. Document how you acquired the notes, receipts, broker confirmations, or bank exchange paperwork help prove provenance later. If you have large amounts, consider storing them in a secure, insured location while you wait for clarity. Also, research established, regulated currency exchange providers in your country. They sometimes offer clearer pathways for converting rare foreign notes when and if a bank route opens. Finally, build a simple financial plan. Decide ahead of time under what conditions you would sell, hold, or partially liquidate. Having a plan reduces panic-driven mistakes when a new announcement appears. It's also important to understand macro-level signals that could prompt a real bank policy change. For a major U.S. bank to begin accepting or facilitating retail-level conversion of Iraqi dinar, credible shifts usually happen at the national or institutional level. The issuing Central Bank of Iraq, could change its exchange or monetary policy. Large correspondent banks could establish liquidity lines or swap arrangements. Or international trade and financial integration with Iraq could increase to the point where handling IQD becomes routine. In short, a bank's decision is usually a response to structural shifts, not just a reaction to social media chatter. Watching official announcements from the Central Bank of Iraq, major international financial institutions, and recognized trade news can give advanced warning of substantial changes. If you follow these official signals and compare them with community chatter, you'll get a much clearer view of whether rumors are credible or just wishful thinking. Let's talk about timing and expectations. because that's where emotions often run high. Even if Chase or another large bank updates policy or tests its systems in 2026, that is not the same as an immediate full-scale retail exchange program where every branch will accept your bills and hand over dollars. Real-world rollouts are often phased, region-limited, and require staff training and updated systems. Friends in the Dinar community sometimes interpret pilot programs or internal testing as immediate acceptance, which creates confusion. So if you see posts that say, Chase will accept your $25,000 today, take a breath and ask for the evidence. Official branch memos, public press releases, or guidance on the bank's website. If none of those exist, the more likely situation is that the bank is exploring possibilities internally, which is meaningful, but not the same as customer-facing acceptance. Plan for the possibility that a formal customer process might still be weeks or months away, even after an internal review is confirmed. Another practical topic: if you decide to contact a bank directly, how should you do it? Use only official contact methods. The phone number on the back of your bank debit card, the secure messaging feature inside the bank's official app, or a verified phone number from the bank's official website. When you call, keep your questions specific and factual. Ask whether your local branch accepts Iraqi dinar, whether they have an internal policy to accept the 25,000 or 50,000 notes, and what documentation and ID they require. Don't rely on social media DMs or numbers posted in comments. Those are the channels scammers love. If the representative gives you unclear answers, politely ask if there is a written policy or a public notice you can be referred to. If they point you to a supervisor or Treasury Services desk, get a name and an official contact and then follow up in writing. Record dates and names of anyone you speak with. That record can be helpful later. Let's go over the risk versus reward calculation in plain language. The reward people hope for is that if major banks accept the larger IQD notes, it could provide legitimate, regulated channels to convert those notes to dollars with fewer fees and more security. The risk is that premature action, like sending money to unknown intermediaries, falling for a guaranteed insider deal, or rushing to exchange without comparing rates, can cost tens of % of your holding or expose you to outright fraud. If acceptance by a major bank becomes a reality, there will still be a spread and costs involved. You should not expect a magically high conversion rate simply because a bank accepts the note. Always compare offers, ask what rate you will receive, whether there are fees, and whether the bank can provide a written statement of their exchange policy. Guard against emotional decisions. The best outcomes tend to come from careful planning and patience. Now, for content creators and community leaders, if you run a Dinar channel or forum, please do your viewers a favor. Label unverified claims clearly and separate fact from rumor. When you share a community tip, say whether it's corroborated by an official source or if it's only circulating on social media. Encourage your followers to verify and remind them about fraud risk. If you quote a bank representative, get their full name and title and ask for confirmation in writing. If you don't get it, say so. The Dinar community thrives on updates, but credibility grows when we prioritize documented facts over speculation. When rumor meets verification, that's when people can take safe action. A few technical pointers about the notes themselves: if you plan to preserve them, store them away from heat, moisture, or folding. Use archival sleeves or a flat storage box. Avoid doing anything that could be considered altering the note, like writing on it or removing tape. If you have notes that are particularly valuable by serial number or condition, uncirculated, special serials, consider getting a professional appraisal or documented verification from a recognized currency specialist before you move them. Specialized dealers sometimes offer appraisal services and can advise on authenticity, rarity, and best handling practices. But be cautious. Reputable appraisals usually cost money. Avoid anyone who promises instant high payouts in exchange for sending the note first. If you're thinking about splitting your approach, heaping some dinar and converting some, that's often a reasonable plan for reducing risk. Keep an amount you're emotionally comfortable with if you want to hold for a long-term upside. and set aside another portion to convert if a credible bank announcement appears. Decide in advance what triggers you would use to sell: a public Chase press release, a published bank policy on the bank site, a confirmed partner bank announcement. Writing your trigger points ahead of time helps prevent impulse decisions during high-emotion moments. Remember to factor taxes and reporting requirements into any conversion decision. Large conversions may have tax implications depending on your country's rules. Let's run through a hypothetical timeline so you know how to read signals. Day 0, a community post claims Chase is testing IQD acceptance. Day 1 to 7, other community channels amplify the claim. You start to see questions directed at the bank. Day 7 to 30, if the bank is actually doing anything formal, you may see quiet internal memos, pilot branches named, or a Treasury Services notice to partner banks. But often this stage remains internal. Day 30 to 90, an official public notice or press release may appear if the bank decides to proceed. Alternatively, the bank may quietly drop the initiative if compliance or liquidity issues arise. That's why patience matters. Meaningful operational changes take time, and early-stage reports are usually the start of a long process rather than an immediate consumer-facing switch. If you want to be proactive without taking undue risk, here's a simple action list. 1. Document your notes, photos, serial numbers. 2. Store them safely. 3. Gather any acquisition paperwork you have. 4. Research licensed exchange services in your region. 5. Subscribe to official bank press channels and the Central Bank of Iraq announcements. 6. Set up a trigger plan for when you'll act. And 7. Avoid any offer that asks for upfront fees or private transfers. Taking these measured steps keeps you prepared without exposing you to scams or panic selling. For viewers who are new to dinar conversation, a quick background: the Iraqi dinar has had periods of volatility and political influence. It's a currency issued by Iraq's central bank and has several denominations in circulation. The dinar's story is wrapped in geopolitics and Reconstruction history, which is why it attracts both legitimate investors and opportunistic scammers. When you combine complicated geopolitics with social media rumor spread, it's easy for inaccurate claims to look real. That alone is a good reason to verify through official channels and to place more weight on formal announcements than community hopefuls. Now, let's address emotional questions some of you will have. Should I sell everything, or is this my one big chance? The honest answer is, it depends on your individual situation, financial goals, and tolerance for risk. For many people, holding currency that could someday appreciate is a speculative play and should be treated that way. If you rely on converted funds for essential expenses, speculate only with money you can afford to lose. If you are younger and have other diversified investments, you might elect to hold a small speculative position while focusing most of your assets on stable diversified investments. Always remember that banking policy moves slowly and that emotions make the worst financial decisions. Let's get a little technical for a moment. In the simplest possible way, banks handle currencies through deposits, correspondent banking, and settlement systems. For retail customers, that usually means the bank either has a way to send the notes back to the issuing country for official conversion, or they have an established partner who provides liquidity in dollars. If those plumbing pieces aren't in place, retail acceptance is impractical. That's why a bank reviewing a currency could be testing whether the plumbing is available, not a sign they'll start exchanging right away. Understanding this helps you interpret announcements sensibly. If you're worried about counterfeits, know that counterfeit detection is sophisticated and part of normal bank operations. Banks use ultraviolet light magnification and serial number checks, and they can and will refuse suspicious notes. If you believe your notes are genuine but they're in poor condition, a bank or exchange may still accept them but require additional verification or paperwork. That's another reason to document everything. Photos, serial numbers, and acquisition records speed up verification if it becomes necessary. Let me give you some wording you can use if you contact a bank so you sound calm and in control. Say, I have Iraqi dinar notes in 25,000 and 50,000 denominations. I'm calling to ask whether your branch accepts IQD for deposit or exchange, and if so, what identification and documentation you require, and what the posted exchange rate would be. If the representative is unsure, ask whether there is a written policy or a number for Treasury services you can call. If they refuse to answer or give vague responses, ask for the contact details of someone who can provide an official memo or website link. Keep it calm, short, and factual. A short section for international viewers. Banks in other countries have different rules. Some national banks or exchange houses may already provide IQD services in areas with large Iraqi expat communities. If you live outside the U.S., check regulated local banks and licensed forex bureaus first. But again, emphasize regulated, documented channels and avoid private buyers or unverified brokers. If a local bank says they accept the notes, request documentation of their process and ask about fees and timeline. President Trump recently made a public statement, revaluation. If you're part of the dinar community that wants to help others, please encourage patience and fact-checking. When a big name like Chase appears in a rumor, many listeners assume immediate legitimacy. Ask your group to stop the spread of unverified claims unless they include verifiable links to official statements. Suggest members check the bank's official media page and the Central Bank of Iraq's publications. Remind people that sharing a rumor without verification can create real financial harm. Before we wrap up, a realistic payoff view, even if Chase or other major banks ultimately accept the 25,000 and 50,000 IQD notes for exchange at branches, the process will likely involve paperwork, delays, and fees. It will be a regulated, documented process, which is what you want, but not a get-rich-quick instant swap. Expect reasonable spreads, verification steps, and perhaps limited daily conversion windows for customers until the bank scales operations. That means a practical approach. Prepare, document, and don't rush. Yields the best long-term outcome. Finally, actionable next steps you can take in the coming days. 1. Document your notes and stash them safely. 2. Gather any proof of purchase or transfer information. 3. Subscribe to the official Chase news feed and the Central Bank of Iraq announcements. 4. Build a personal trigger plan for when you'll act. 5. Avoid upfront fees or promises of guaranteed high conversion rates. And 6. If a credible public announcement appears, compare bank rates and fees before you accept any offer. Do this and you'll be ready whether the news turns out to be a cautious review or a genuine policy shift. Thank you for staying with me through this long update. To recap in one short thought, the chatter about Chase reviewing 25,000 and 50,000 Iraqi dinar notes is real in the online community, but confirmatory official announcements are what change the game for everyday holders. Keep your notes safe, verify through official channels, avoid scams, and prepare a calm plan for action. If you want, I'll post a follow-up with a one-page checklist you can download and use when contacting banks, and I'll keep monitoring official channels in case a bank posts a formal notice. If you found this useful, like the video, share it with others in your groups, and subscribe so you don't miss any real confirmed updates.